thank you so much for having me, and if you guys have any questions, I would be delighted to take them. Yes?
Can you give an example of what type of regulations you see should be reduced or minimized or,
Repeal.
What'd you say?
Repeal.
Yeah, repeal for businesses?
Absolutely. I think right now, one of the key things that we need to look at as a state government, you guys all heard last Thursday when the Legislative Fiscal Bureau came out with the new estimate that we were going to be staring down the barrel of a $2.5 billion budget deficit instead of a $2.3 billion budget deficit. We need to look at ways to take gigantic bites, $1 million, billion-dollar bites out of that deficit. One of the things that I would propose is that we take apart the DNR, because right now the DNR stands in the way of progress in so many ways in the state of Wisconsin. You hear it up in Minocqua, you hear it in my hometown of Oconomowoc. If the DNR had their way, sometimes I think they would like to turn Wisconsin into a gigantic swamp and eliminate the people and just allow the mosquitoes to do their thing, which they have this summer for sure. Not that I'm saying the DNR planted them. But what we need to do, I believe, is eliminate a gigantic percentage of the pencil-pushing bureaucrats whose job, it seems, is to do nothing but hassle business owners and property owners who want to do nothing more than to make this state a more beautiful place, a more successful place in which to live. We can put stocking under the Department of Ag and the wardens under the state troopers, and I think that eliminating the people who enforce regulations and basically have rolls of red tape. I don't even know if they have Scotch tape in the DNR. Eliminating a lot of the people who control the red tape would help tremendously.
A lot of times, though, even with the DNR, that they're regulated then by, let's say, FEMA or EPA, you know, it goes up the ladder too, and sometimes their hands are tied depending on what's going on.
There's no doubt about it, but
Yeah.
when it comes right down to it, I'm a local government type of gal. And so I believe that those regulations should be handled closer to home. It's the same way I feel about education. Those decisions need to be made closer to home, because the more local your government, the more control the people actually have. You can actually call up your town chairman or your city councilman, and you can talk to him or her about a problem. It's not like you're calling up anybody at FEMA and telling them about a dog barking complaint. And so part of that is fundamental thinking. And I believe that government should be local. Anybody else? Yes?
Rebecca, you mentioned earlier that you have a journalism background in
Yes.
education. One of the areas that I guess concerns me greatly in the state of Wisconsin is the conservative movement seems to constantly be battling the media. And I personally don't feel that our state has reached its bottom yet, that the economy is going to suffer, and the large deficits that you spoke about are going to really hit in the next terms of the people elected. How do you propose, or how do you see dealing with the media in the next 4 years when some of these problems become apparent? And I really think that we're going to have some success in turning the Senate and the Assembly.
Yes.
But it's going to be right for the media to blame it on the conservative approach. How can you address that, or how do you plan to address that? It needs to be addressed.
Yes, I do. His question was about how do we actually get our message out to a media that may not want to tell our version of the story. And it is a very good and very legitimate question. And I'm going to back it up a little bit and explain to you guys a little bit of what I know from being inside the media, and why I am still a conservative, despite the fact that I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a journalism degree, and then ended up working in Rockford, Illinois as my first stop before I came to WISN. There are two different types of mindsets, I think, when you go into journalism. And I think you guys are going to be able to identify with these immediately because you'll know someone who's the other guy. I would walk into a lead paint abatement story, and where a colleague of mine might walk past the mattress on the floor and the dishes heaped in the sink that smell, and the roaches climbing the window, and the peeling lead paint, and see victims and sadness and something that someone else had done. I would walk in and see all those things. But, you know, I'm a journalist, and so I look all over the place. And I would go beyond the mattress on the floor and look at the big screen TV across from the mattress that they had been sitting on the mattress because the video game system is right down there and it's easier to play. And I would wonder to myself, well, can't they afford, you know, a box spring and some sheets when they got the big screen there? And as I walk into the kitchen and see the dirty dishes piling up, I think to myself, well, you know, they're not a victim. Why didn't they just do those? You know, I didn't have a dishwasher, you know, until my third house. What? I washed dishes, and then I would see the roach infestation, and I would wonder, you know, well, how can, you know, they're name brand sneakers right over there in that corner. You could have not bought the name brand sneakers and bought some roach traps or name brand sneakers. I mean, you could afford an exterminator on name brand sneakers some days, right? And so while they saw a victim, and while they saw a government solution for this problem, as a conservative, I saw someone who made a choice. And they chose not to do their dishes. And they chose to buy the sneakers instead of the roach traps. And they chose not to buy the sheets for the bed and the video game system instead. And I believe everyone has a choice. But that may explain the mindset a little bit of the folks who are determining what stories get covered every day. Because
so how would you report on that situation then?
Well, honestly, if the story is about lead paint abatement, which, and I'm giving an actual example here.
Okay.
The story is about lead paint abatement.
Okay.
You know, so the story's not about, you know, the nonsense.
Yeah.
The nonsense, though, helps you form who you are, and it helps the people who are also in that room, making decisions and covering stories, form who they are. And so when you see a story and you feel that it has a slant on it, it may come from one of the people that saw that differently, one of the people who saw those folks as victims. Now, as a journalist, I prided myself on not letting my emotions into the story and not letting my personal beliefs into the story. You know, I was straight up. And my biggest, I think, claim to fame at this point is the fact that I was the journalist who chased down the former Milwaukee County exec, Tom Ament, and demanded he answer the tough questions about his pension scandal on camera. That was the beginning of the end for the scoundrel named Tom Ament, because he had sold taxpayers down the river. But those stories don't pop up every day. And the other part of that question was, how are we going to combat it? And my answer is, we already have begun to combat it. Years ago, in the news media, local news was the name of the game. When I was in J school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, local news was what we all aspired to go into and do. And, you know, the top of the heap was network. Man, if you made it to network, you were in business. You know, you were send letters home and contributions to mom and dad because you had hit the big time. You were a star. And so that was everyone's goal in college, is to make it to network, because you had to go through all these local news channels before you made it there. But within years, cables started taking over. And we saw the surgence of cable television. And all of a sudden, the advertisers started to be siphoned off of network. And network wasn't as exciting anymore, because now there was CNN. And CNN, they were, broadcasting the war live. And they were doing this exciting stuff that the network wasn't really doing. And beyond that, you started to have the internet. And what we saw on the internet was the Dead Tree dailies starting to put their news coverage onto the internet. And as the internet gradually gained more and more popularity, we saw advertisers siphoned off of the Dead Tree media. And so now you see huge dailies shutting their doors, huge dailies going to just a couple days a week or sometimes just a Sunday, because you have competitors like the blogs. A lot of you and I, we don't get most of our news from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel or the Cap Times, the Green Bay Press Gazette anymore. We go to the blogs a lot of the time.